What happens when Hollywood's most beloved nice guy confronts a talk show host with undeniable proof that they got their facts completely wrong on national television? A brutal showdown. And it only took 15 seconds for Keanu Reeves to back Tamron Hall into a corner so tight that she had no choice but to admit she was wrong during their heated argument that stunned everyone watching. Before we dive into this absolutely unprecedented moment, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the confrontations mainstream media won't cover, and the moments that celebrities try to bury. Hit that subscribe button, because this raw, unfiltered content doesn't exist anywhere else. Last night's episode of Tamron Hall was supposed to be a straightforward interview with Keanu Reeves about his upcoming film project and his ongoing charity work. Instead, it turned into one of the most intense, uncomfortable exchanges in daytime television history, when Tamron brought up a controversial story about Keanu's past that turned out to be completely false. What followed was a masterclass in how to dismantle misinformation in real time, ending with Tamron forced to publicly admit her mistake while Keanu walked off the set, leaving the entire studio in shocked silence. The interview started pleasantly enough. Keanu walked out to warm applause, dressed in his typical understated style, dark jeans and a simple blazer. Tamron greeted him enthusiastically, and they settled into her bright, modern set. The first several minutes were exactly what you'd expect. Discussion about his latest film, stories from set, his thoughts on the current state of cinema. Keanu was his usual thoughtful self, giving detailed answers, showing genuine interest in the questions, making the audience laugh with self-deprecating humor. Tamron seemed delighted to have him there, nodding along, building on his answers, creating what appeared to be an easy, flowing conversation. Then Tamron shifted to discussing Keanu's personal life, specifically his history of tragedy and loss. She mentioned it sensitively at first, acknowledging how he'd faced unimaginable pain but used it to fuel his compassion and charity work. Keanu nodded, clearly uncomfortable with the topic, but handling it gracefully. But then Tamron said something that changed everything. "And of course," she continued, "there was that incident about 5 years ago where you were accused of being difficult on set, refusing to work with certain crew members, which really surprised people given your reputation. How did you handle that controversy?" Keanu's expression shifted immediately. "I'm sorry. What incident?" Tamron looked down at her notes. "The story that came out about you having conflicts with production staff on that action film you were working on. It was widely reported. Several crew members allegedly complained about your behavior." Keanu sat up straighter. "Tamron, that never happened. That story was completely fabricated." Tamron smiled, but there was uncertainty in it now. "Well, it was reported by multiple outlets. I have the information right here in my research." "Then your research is wrong," Keanu said firmly. "That story was debunked within days of it coming out. It was traced back to a fake social media account. There was never any truth to it whatsoever." The audience stirred. Tamron looked flustered, glancing at her producers off camera. "I'm quite certain this was a legitimate story, Keanu. It made headlines." Keanu leaned forward. "It made headlines because it was a lie, designed to damage my reputation. And it worked, temporarily, until the truth came out. But clearly, not everyone got that memo." Tamron's smile was gone now. "I think you might be misremembering, Keanu. I have reputable sources here that covered this story extensively." "Reputable sources that never issued corrections when the story fell apart?" Keanu challenged. "Tamron, I'm telling you as someone who was actually there, as someone who lived through having to defend myself against completely made-up accusations. That story was false. Completely, entirely, 100% false. The tension in the studio was palpable now. Tamron shuffled her papers, clearly thrown off. Well, I'm reading from the research provided by my team, and it indicates that there were real complaints filed. Keanu's voice remained calm, but had an edge to it. Then your team failed you, because no complaints were ever filed. The entire story originated from someone pretending to be a crew member on social media. It spread because people love negative stories about celebrities, but it had zero basis in reality. This was thoroughly investigated and disproven. Tamron's face was getting flushed. Keanu, I appreciate your perspective, but I have to go with the documentation I have in front of me. Documentation of lies, Keanu said flatly. You're sitting here on your show, telling your audience something about me that isn't true. And when I'm telling you directly that it's false, you're choosing to believe paperwork over the person it's actually about? The audience was completely silent now, everyone leaning forward to catch every word. This was not going how anyone expected. Tamron tried to regain control. I'm not trying to attack you, Keanu. I'm simply bringing up something that was in the public discourse about you. Public discourse based on misinformation, Keanu countered. And you're perpetuating it right now, on your platform, to your audience. Do you understand how damaging that is? Tamron set down her notes, clearly defensive now. I do extensive research before every interview. My team works incredibly hard to fact-check everything we discuss. Then they missed something crucial, Keanu said, his voice getting harder. They found the original false story, but didn't bother to look for the corrections, the retractions, the actual truth. That's not extensive research, Tamron. That's lazy journalism. Tamron's eyes widened. Lazy journalism? That's quite an accusation from someone who's not a journalist. I don't need to be a journalist to know the difference between truth and lies, Keanu shot back. And I definitely don't need to be one to recognize when someone is more interested in a sensational story than actual facts. The audience gasped. This was getting intense, and Tamron knew she was losing control of the situation. Keanu, I think you're overreacting, she said, trying to sound calm. If there's been a misunderstanding, we can clarify it. But there's no need to attack my credibility or my team's work. Keanu stood up, surprising everyone. He wasn't leaving yet, but the gesture was powerful. A misunderstanding? Tamron, you just accused me on national television of being difficult and unprofessional, based on a story that was proven to be completely fabricated years ago. That's not a misunderstanding. That's spreading false information. Tamron stood as well, clearly flustered. I was simply asking you about something that was reported. No, Keanu said firmly. You stated it as fact. You said I was accused, that crew members complained, that it was widely reported. You presented it as truth. And when I told you it was false, you doubled down and said your sources were reliable. Tamron looked to her producers desperately. Can we pull up the original sources? Please do, Keanu said, his voice dripping with controlled anger. I would love for your audience to see exactly what you're basing this on. There was chaos off camera as producers scrambled. Tamron tried to fill the awkward silence. Keanu, I really think we're blowing this out of proportion. Are we? Keanu asked. Because from where I'm standing, a talk show host just defamed me on live television and refuses to acknowledge that she might be wrong. I'm not refusing anything, Tamron protested. I'm trying to verify the information. You should have verified it before you brought it up, Keanu said coldly. That's what actual journalists do. They check their facts before they present them as truth, especially when those facts could damage someone's reputation. Tamron's hands were shaking now. Keanu, I have been a journalist for decades. I know how to do my job. Then do it right, Keanu challenged. Admit that you brought up a debunked story without verifying it was debunked. Admit that you made a mistake. The standoff was electric. Everyone in the studio was holding their breath. Tamron looked like she wanted to disappear, but Keanu wasn't backing down. A producer ran up and whispered something to Tamron. Her face went pale. She looked down, then back up at Keanu. It appears, she said quietly, that there may have been some confusion with our research. Confusion, Keanu repeated. That's one way to put it. Tamron took a deep breath. The story was indeed disputed and largely discredited, though some outlets never issued formal corrections. So you're admitting you brought up a false story, Keanu pressed. Tamron hesitated. I'm saying the story was more complicated than I initially presented. No, Keanu said sharply. It's not complicated. It was false. Say it. The audience was riveted. This was unlike anything they'd ever seen from Keanu Reeves. The nice guy was gone, replaced by someone demanding accountability. Tamron looked like she might cry. Keanu, I don't appreciate being put on the spot like this. And I don't appreciate being accused of behavior I never exhibited, Keanu fired back. You put me on the spot first. I'm just defending myself with facts. Something you should have done before you opened your mouth. Tamron's voice was shaking now. This is my show, Keanu. I won't be spoken to like this on my own show. Then stop spreading lies on your show, Keanu said, his voice rising. You have a responsibility to your audience to tell them the truth, not sensationalized garbage that makes for good television but ruins people's reputations. One of the other producers approached, but Keanu held up his hand. No, we're going to settle this right now. Tamron, you have a choice. You can admit that you were wrong, that the story was false, that you should have verified it before bringing it up. Or I can walk off this set right now and your audience can draw their own conclusions about why. The ultimatum hung in the air. Tamron looked around desperately, but there was no escape. Her team had confirmed Keanu was right. She was cornered. Fine, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The story was discredited. It shouldn't have been presented as fact. I was wrong to bring it up without verifying its current status. Louder, Keanu said. Your audience needs to hear it clearly. Tamron's face went red, but she spoke up. I was wrong. The story about Keanu being difficult on set was debunked. I should have known that before bringing it up. I apologize for the error. Keanu nodded slowly. Thank you. That wasn't so hard, was it? But he wasn't done. Now tell them why this matters. Tell them why spreading false information is dangerous. Tamron looked at him with a mix of humiliation and anger. Keanu, I've apologized. Can we please move on? No, he said firmly, because this isn't just about me. This is about every person who's had their reputation damaged by lazy research and sensationalist media. Tell your audience why accuracy matters. Tamron took a shaky breath. Accuracy matters because false stories can hurt people. They can damage careers and reputations. And as someone with a platform, I have a responsibility to get things right. And did you get this right? Keanu pressed. No, Tamron admitted, her voice breaking slightly. I did not get this right. Keanu finally started unhooking his microphone. I appreciate the admission, Tamron. I really do. But the fact that I had to force it out of you, that you fought me every step of the way instead of just checking your facts when I first corrected you, that tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. Tamron reached out. Keanu, please, let's continue the interview. We can talk about your film, your charity work. Why would I do that? Keanu asked, pulling off his mic pack. So you can twist more facts? So you can present more research that turns out to be garbage? No, thank you. I came here in good faith and you ambushed me with lies. I didn't ambush you, Tamron protested. It was a genuine mistake. A mistake you defended repeatedly, Keanu said. A mistake you only admitted when you had no other choice. That's not a mistake, Tamron. That's negligence. He dropped his microphone on the chair and turned to the audience. I hope you all understand what just happened here. A talk show host presented false information as fact, and when called out, tried to defend it rather than admit error. Remember this the next time you hear gossip presented as news. Verify everything. Trust nothing at face value. The audience started applauding, slowly at first, then building. They were on Keanu's side completely. Tamron tried one more time. Keanu, I understand you're upset, but walking off seems extreme. Keanu looked at her with something like pity. What's extreme is spreading lies about people and only apologizing when you're backed into a corner. What's extreme is prioritizing your ego over the truth. I'm done here, Tamron. Good luck with the rest of your show. He walked toward the exit, his steps purposeful and steady. Tamron stood there, frozen, unable to move or speak. Her team was in chaos. Cameras didn't know where to point. The audience was still applauding Keanu. As he reached the edge of the stage, Keanu paused and looked back one final time. By the way, the crew on that film you mentioned, they actually gave me a gift at the wrap party, thanking me for being one of the most professional actors they'd ever worked with. That's the truth. Maybe lead with that next time. And with those final words, Keanu Reeves walked off the Tamron Hall show, leaving behind a humiliated host, a stunned audience, and one of the most powerful moments of accountability in talk show history. The cameras stayed on Tamron, capturing her standing alone, her apology forced but on record, her credibility shattered by her own stubbornness. Tamron finally sat down slowly, looking at her team with an expression of complete defeat. The show had to go on somehow, but everyone knew this moment would define the episode, would define how people saw her research process, would define what happens when you challenge someone with facts on your side, but lies on your lips. Keanu disappeared through the studio doors, and they closed behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than any slam could have. He'd come to promote a movie. Instead, he taught a masterclass in standing up for truth, demanding accountability, and refusing to let misinformation slide just because it came from someone with a platform and a smile.